is on the line. It's hard to see who's all on at the moment, but just wanted to kind of review again, if I could get my cursor to behave, um, who's all involved. So on the Vanderwall side, Scott Harrington, principal with the firm, Meredith Perks, an associate who will be working closely with me throughout the project, especially coordinating meetings and such. Lupita Alvarez, also on the team, and will be working especially on public outreach. And I think you all know Jeff Maloney by this point, but obviously significant knowledge of the community. In terms of our partners, Public Administration Associates, Kevin Brunner and Daryl Hoffland will be leading that, and they'll be working particularly with your department heads and looking at your budget and organizational structure. And we also have EQT by Design, led by Annette Miller, with De'Ara Parker and Myra Medrano. All three of them will be engaged in especially working with the vision panels and ensuring inclusion and equity throughout the process and in the final product. So I think all these folks are on the line. If things come up, we can certainly draw upon them when needed. There's two issues that we really want to kind of cover tonight, but before we jump into that, I thought I would just kind of spend a quick brief overview. I think you've seen this chart now a few different times, but just to kind of explain where we are now, where we're headed, what does it look like kind of throughout the summer and into the fall especially. So today we are on step one, activity one, which is sort of really finalizing the process here, wanting in particular to get your input on the advisory committee component of this project, and then also confirming that the vision panels are the ones that make the most sense to you as the city council. From that, we will put together a more detailed schedule and get that back out to you, but basically looking to jump right into step two, activity two, which includes a meeting, individual meetings with council members. We're looking to start those at the end of this month and complete that in June. But each one of you individually would have a chance to kind of share your vision, what your issues are, what opportunities you see for the city. That's really the opportunity for you all to put on the table whatever you want to see evaluated and considered for inclusion within the strategic plan. So I think those should be really interesting and a lot of fun. And what we will do is provide some trigger questions to you in advance to help you all prepare for that. And Meredith will be reaching out to get those scheduled. We'll also be meeting with the department heads as a group and kind of talking about the same things from their perspective, the future of the city, kind of current state of their operations. And those may be followed up by some individual interviews and with some more detailed kind of questionnaires. So we're looking to do that probably around mid-June. With this advisory committee, assuming that that's something you still want to move forward with tonight, we would look to get those folks in place probably in June and convene them either in late June or early July. Activity 4 is something that we would also begin in June. This is where we kind of take a deep dive into assets and opportunities for the community. Where is Middleton headed? What are its options given kind of global, national, regional, and local trends? Where do you kind of fit into the greater Madison area, your role in the region, and starting to kind of figure out what the community values and core issues are from our conversations with you and department heads, and then augmenting those with these vision panels. We have 5 here, and we'll talk about those in a moment. But from that, we would then really start to frame up a vision and a strategic framework and share that with the larger public. So we would probably convene the vision panels maybe in July, August, and have that public meeting then sometime in the early to mid fall. And then we return to the council after that. And that would probably conclude what we would do this year, is to have a pretty good idea of what the vision and framework look like. We would start the following year then of confirming that with the vision panels, and again, another public meeting, and moving right into the strategic action plan and completing that in the spring with a final approval by you and a rollout with the public. So a quick overview. This is pretty much what we have presented from the outset, and schedule really hasn't changed a great deal, even though we got started maybe a little bit later than we initially anticipated. In your packet for the meeting, we included a one-page description of what is a strategic plan. So as you engage with your neighbors and friends and constituents to explain this process to them, and I hope you do talk about it in the community, because we want to have community input and have people know what's going on, you can turn back again and again to this one-page description to help explain what it is, and certainly feel free to forward it to people. We'll be using this as we reach out to potential folks for maybe membership on the advisory committee or on the vision panels, so that they understand what this thing is. Because you hear strategic plan, it means a lot of different things to different people. And we tried to provide some clarity of what it means for Middleton in terms of this process. I think one of the things that makes this strategic plan a little different, or somewhat different, from strategic plans that like a private organization might undertake, is that you're a public organization. And so this strategic plan is as much outward focused as it is inward. So we really are looking to engage with the public, set a vision for the entire community that's supported by the entire community. And then at the same time, how do we align the city resources that are available to help move towards that goal? So then it becomes very inward focused in terms of how you're structured, how you set up your financing plan, even your capital facilities. So I think that makes this a really interesting and fun kind of strategic planning process that's maybe a little bit different than what some of you have been through if you've been part of strategic planning with a private organization, is that we have this public component. And as you know, from when we kind of presented our proposal, I think one of the things that we did stress was the need to really be outwardly focused and inclusive. We've obviously got a great start on that, having just completed a comprehensive plan that covers a lot of issues. And so it's a great foundation on which to start. Certainly nobody wants to go backwards from that. What we want to do is build on that. So for tonight, there's kind of two things we want to have some discussion and input from you. One is the advisory committee and what it is, how it would function, and therefore what should the general membership be. We're not looking for names of people tonight. What we're looking for is what kind of representation would be on that committee. And then separately, we'll come up with a list of potential names that the council can look at another meeting. Vision panels, again, same thing. What's the purpose and role? And what are the themes and topics? We've identified 5 different themes, and we want to make sure that you all feel that those are the best 5 in terms of getting the broadest level of participation across the community, especially from groups that maybe historically haven't really participated in past planning efforts. So before I kind of jump into the advisory committee, I know I just covered a fair amount in terms of the schedule and the process and what is a strategic plan. I'll just kind of stop here for a minute and see if there are any questions about those things before we jump into issues.
Scott, this is Luke. Would you mind circling all the way back to the very first slide that you had?
Absolutely. This one?
Nope, all the way at the very beginning.
All the way, okay.
Yeah, okay. So just as an FYI, that says 2014 on the dates at the bottom.
No, yes, it does. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No problem. I just wanted to make sure you weren't covering something in the like an older one or something along those.
No, I don't know where that came from, so I apologize for that. No, we're not. This isn't a history lesson. Anything else? Anybody has a question on or a comment in terms of the schedule or what is the strategic plan, the process? Again, I can't see
This
everybody.
is Emily.
Okay.
This is Emily. I like it. It sounds good. It seems reasonable, and I appreciate your time.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So with that, I'm going to move on then.
Hi, Scott, this is Mir Brar, and I looked at your panels and they look good. But one of the group which at least to me seem to be missing is the folks who have been living here in the city for a long time. So I can see the education, local businesses, underrepresented communities, neighborhood influencers, community youth. But I think somehow it looks interesting, but there seems to be something missing here. It's just which is the heart and soul of the city. The people have lived their whole life here, and somehow how to involve them. I can see what you have put there is certainly very interesting, but I don't really think that it covers what I would like to see.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that, and I definitely want to hear that input. You could we could hold on that for just a little bit here. I first wanted to talk about the advisory committee, and then we'll talk about the panels. That's okay.
Excellent.
All right. So anything else on just the basic process or what is the plan? Hearing nothing, then let's talk about the advisory committee. So in our original materials, we called this a steering committee, but we really felt that was an inaccurate word, because the idea of the advisory committee is, at least as we envisioned it, and we're certainly open to your thoughts, is really as a sounding board. We weren't looking for a replacement in any way for the city council. At the end of the day, this is your strategic plan. It's, you are the leaders of this organization, and the success of the plan is really going to be tied to you're agreeing to fund it and to, direct the organization to move in that towards implementation. So this really is critical that the council really be fully immersed in this process and really driving this process. The idea of the advisory committee was to be a sounding board, that as we come up with ideas, as we put things together, to have another opportunity to connect with various groups in the community to get their input. And so we're not asking them for specific recommendations. They're not directing us as consultants or staff to do anything. They are providing us with some input that we can then share with you of how these different groups felt about different aspects of the plan and vision as we're developing them. So based on that, we felt steering committee, kind of was not the best name, but that an advisory committee was really a more appropriate title. And so the general composition that we're suggesting would be one elected official, a representative from each of the vision panels, whatever they may end up being, that we'll talk about in a little bit. Maybe two members that represent one of your existing standing committees, and then one city staff member. This keeps the membership to a workable number of, of 9, which we find is a good number, because with that number, people are kind of invested in it and are willing to make the time for it, but it's not too impossible to find a meeting date that works for everybody. what we find is that as these committees get bigger and bigger, that people feel like, well, if I miss a meeting, it's not a big deal because there's 15 other people. Unfortunately, when that happens, 10 other people feel the same way. And you may have a committee of 15 members and only 5 show up. So I think with 9, we would have a good commitment. We show in our scope of services that's attached to the contract that you'll be voting on tonight that there'd be 4 times over the period of the whole process that we would convene this group. So it's not a huge amount of time, but we'd probably meet with them for about 2 hours at each clip and 4 times over the next year. So we want to make sure that these people would be committed to it. Our suggestion in terms of arriving at the specific individuals is that one, assuming that you want to have an advisory committee, that is something that you would find useful as you hear what we have to say and consider the information that we bring forward to you, and that this general composition of membership is appropriate, or whatever you come up with tonight, that we would meet with the mayor, the council president, and with Mike to kind of hash through specific names and then bring back a list of names for the council to ratify at a meeting probably next month, or if not then in July. As I said, we're not looking to have this first meeting until probably later in July anyhow. So there's plenty of time to figure out who the specific individuals are. So that's the idea behind the advisory committee, at least as we've envisioned it. And again, I'll kind of stop here and let you all kind of discuss whether that aligns with your thoughts and anything else you'd like to contribute in this regard.
Well, I will start if there isn't anyone else there. So Scott, great job here. So what I would like to see is that the people who have lived in Middleton long time and they have seen how the city has changed in past 30, 40 years from, well, it became city in 63, whatever. So, and what do they want to see where it should be going? I would like the vision of those as well who have a lot of ownership and who made the city as it is today and have seen these huge changes occur. There's a lot of wisdom there, and I don't know where that will fit in, but I don't want that. I want that. I'd like you to think about that, how we are going to get that input.
Mr. Mayor, perhaps that someone representing that core of the city should be on the panel of representatives.
What?
This is Katie, and I said perhaps there should be someone as a part of the panel of representatives on the advisory committee.
Oh, absolutely. I agree that it's, we can't really, these groups are great, but leaving about, the people with so much of knowledge who have seen how it has changed, they will have a different vision and different way of looking at it. And we have to involve them and we have to find some way to do it.
Yeah, and I think as we, if we kind of stick with this kind of grouping, we could find somebody who not only fits, let's say, one of these slots, but also meets that criteria as well. So I think as we're, looking at specific individuals, that's one of the things that we can look at. And they might also happen to represent a business, or they might also happen to be on a committee or what have you. So Or, I mean, if you feel it's critical enough, we could make it its own category. But I just wanted to point out that it's also possible to meet that criteria and perhaps meet one of these others as well.
Well, I like to think about it. I don't think anybody want to see this looking as a elitist group. So that's what I would like not to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Kathy, you're muted.
When I look at the vision panel representatives, it's based on what visioning panels you have outlined. And the youth seems to be represented in 4 of the different visioning panels, where older adult communities is only listed under the underrepresented communities. And I think that we need to elevate that population into more of these categories.
I agree with you, Kathy. Thank you.
Any other thoughts on the advisory committee? Is the council on board with having an advisory committee and that this would be its role? Does that work for you?
This is
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
this is-
Robert.
This is Robert Burke. I think this is great. I think we do need this mix of people. So I like your vision panel representatives. And like you said, I think, I mean, there's only going to be one person for each of these various, representing one of these groups, but any one person brings a lot to the table. As you said, that, for instance, an ambassador may be somebody who's lived in the city for 25 years or longer. Who knows? So we might get some representation there. But it's good to talk about it and to try to make sure that we get everybody we want. That our panel has a breadth to it. But I think this is a really good start, and I fully endorse the direction that's presented here.
Yeah, and Scott, in terms of the meetings of the advisory committee themselves, is that something that's organized by Vanderwall, or is there a particular considered like a chair of the advisory committee who's responsible for that? Talk to me a little bit about the logistics.
Sure. No, I think we are envisioning that we would organize it. If you look at the scope of services, we've tentatively kind of scheduled these meetings at kind of critical junctures where we kind of have some draft work product and some things to share, where we can get some feedback from them before we take those either out to you or out to the public or even the vision panels to some extent. So it's just a great sounding board to have. And so the 4 places that we've kind of put them in are at those kind of critical junctures within the process. And again, we would be sort of working with city staff to sort of set those agendas and to facilitate those meetings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the cursory research that I've done on other communities that have followed a similar process is this is right in line with what they have done as well. So I think it's a great idea.
Susan, you have your hand up.
Yes, I like the idea. I think we do need to be sure and get a wide range of citizens. And I think the way it's set up will do that. I know the mayor's concerned about having long-term residents, but I think we also need, and I could see other than the youth representative, we could have long-term residents for all of these things. But I think it's important also to keep a balance of having people with different backgrounds, and so can bring in new ideas from other communities they perhaps lived in or other experiences. So I want to see a really good balance of people that can bring a wide range of ideas in. And the one thing that I'm a little, 2 things I'm concerned about is just education of the committee in terms of all the financial, and this might be covered later, but one of our biggest challenges as a city is the levy limits imposed by the state and having to work within those. So I want to be sure the advisory committee is well educated about that, those policies, limitations and laws. And I want to be sure we've also got enough emphasis on public safety.
Yeah, there's no doubt that there'll be a lot of educating to do in order for them to provide informed feedback. So absolutely.
Emily,
Hi.
you have your hand up.
Thanks. I was just gonna say, I really like the depth and the breadth of these panels and the ideas out there. And I agree with Susan and the mayor with needing representation from people who are second, third, fourth generation Middletonians, as well as some newcomers with experience from other places. I'm looking at Vision Panel 1, and I do have a small child in preschool and was in daycare for 5 years. And, you know, I have to tell you, in the pandemic, I did not think daycare was important. It's really important. And so for working parents, when they're back to the workforce full throttle, it might be just good to know that we have daycares enough for all these families moving in. And maybe that is part of your idea, but we have so many businesses in the community. You know, like my daycare is situated halfway between my workplace that I haven't been to in 14 months and Middleton. So right now I'm driving into Madison 20 minutes every day and driving back because I have a spot in Madison. And so it's not to say that there's not spots here in Middleton, because I do know of 3 daycares. I'm sure Mike knows of more. But golly, before they enter kindergarten, you gotta have some pre-K. So just an idea.
Thank you. Well, if nobody else has their hand up at the moment, why don't we kind of move forward then to the vision panels, and then if we need to, we can kind of come back to the advisory committee. So the vision panels, and I'm sorry, I keep juggling, trying to see as many of you as possible with trying to actually see my slides. So keep moving the boxes around. So the vision panels will really help inform the vision and the framework. And we're really trying to, again, reach out to a broad cross-section of the community, and especially within whatever sort of themes we come up with, to try to find folks who may not really have been engaged with the city in the past. We want to make sure that the vision and the plan not only sort of mentions their values, but also reflects it in a way that's meaningful to them, and that their experiences are really embedded in that final product. So we want to use them again as a sounding board to first develop the vision and framework, and then to give us feedback after we kind of coalesce what we hear from them and from you and the advisory committee and the department heads, to, you know, again, make sure that it's inclusive and that it's resonating with a cross-section of the community. We're also looking for the members of the vision panels to perhaps serve as a liaison to other stakeholders to get their opinions and bring those forward, and to encourage those folks to also participate in the process where we have the larger public meetings. So the 5 panel, I'll call them kind of themes that we came up with. One is education. We know the school district is a very critical part of why people choose to live in in Middleton, and will likewise continue to be very critical to Middleton's ability to attract and retain residents. But we do want to expand that because, you know, Madison is a higher education kind of based community. And so even while there may not be direct UW facilities in the community, they certainly impact it, as well as MATC and the private schools. And this could be another place to also include daycare. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Next panel was local business organizations and business owners. We know you did a survey of businesses last year and got a lot of good input, but obviously Middleton is a place to do business is really something that I think has expanded dramatically over the last 20 years. And, you know, it really sets you apart from a lot of the other suburban Madison communities. Your employment base is quite impressive. It's a big chunk of your tax base and will continue to be a very important part of the community, as well as your small downtown, you know, local businesses. So we would want to have a cross section within that group. Underrepresented communities we've talked about before. The list that we included in the packet, you know, included kind of racial and ethnic minorities, but also folks who are disabled or LGBT community and elderly as well. We had neighborhood influencers. These are, we know that the city doesn't have sort of active formal neighborhood associations like Madison does, but we also know there's a lot of civic groups and other kind of local organizations and just individuals who are very involved in some component of the community. And then community youth. And so while youth can be represented on these other 4 panels, getting young folks together to really talk about it. I mean, they are the future of the community, right? And so creating a space specifically for them. We haven't arrived at an exact number, but I think we would kind of define youth as sort of anybody younger than 25. So we want to include people who are maybe right out of college or, you know, just sort of starting a career or, you know, jobs as young adults, but as well as, you know, kids into high school. So we've had sort of this same 5 groupings since we first put our proposal together, but, and we've sort of expanded the definitions as you saw in the materials in the packet, but want to make sure again that these 5 themes or sort of groupings are adequate in your opinion to get that broad base of input. As far as appointing specific individuals, our recommendation there is that we would work with staff to kind of put these panels together. When we meet with you individually, we'll also ask for your inputs as individual council members of people that you think might fit within these groupings that could be brought in. But we'd like to keep this a little bit more informal. And we think we'll be able to uncover some people that maybe none of you are even aware of that would be really good voices to have. So this is much more informal than the advisory committee. In other planning processes, we often call these sort of focus groups or, you know, stakeholder groups that we put together. So we certainly want your ideas on specific individuals that could be included, not tonight, but when we meet with you individually. But we would not be bringing these back for formal endorsement by the council. We would just assemble the panels and work with them from there. So that's the role and the kind of outline, and take any comments.
Now, Scott, so what I think everybody would like to see is that, and which I'm trying to do right now, is that for example, all the city committees should have a geographic diversity. That means we have 8 aldermanic districts. So somehow the whole city is represented on these panels. And it's I know there are a couple of districts who are heavily represented, and there isn't much I can do about it. But we are talking about a much bigger thing here, talking about where we want the city to be 10, 15, 20 years from now and spending $120,000. So I like to see that all parts of the city are represented on these panels and on the advisory council as well. So that's what I would like to see.
Sure. No, it's a great idea.
Katie, you've had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. The only thing that I noticed on the bullet points in the vision panels is underrepresented communities. There's no listing for Native American or Indigenous community. So I'd like to have that added.
And Luke, you've got your hand up.
And good catch, Katie. Thank you.
You know, and Scott, maybe this is what you're going to get to, or perhaps focused on it, but I'm curious in terms of particularly on the underrepresented communities, what sort of initiatives or strategies do you foresee rolling out in order to reach those underrepresented communities? Because obviously, you know, we're always eager to engage them and get them, but whether it be due to, you know, rental housing or a variety of factors, it may be a little bit more challenging to connect with them than it would be other groups. So curious as to what you've seen be successful in the past and how you see that rolling out here in Middleton.
Sure. Annette, can I call on you or one of
Sure, you can call on me. No, hi, thanks for the question. Annette Miller with Equity by Design, helping with the engagement piece. So what we'll do is, you know, we've been in Madison for quite some time, for about 30 years. And so we have different relationships around the community. So we'll be tapping into our relationships to talk to our friends and family. And when I say family, I mean just longtime relationships. I don't mean truly related, just to be clear, since this is the council. And we ask folks who live in Middleton, who should we be reaching out to, who would be able to help us understand what do we need to know about what's happening in Middleton, who might be some good ambassadors. So we'll be, and of course, you know, Scott's already said that he'll be talking to all of you. So we always start with talking to our clients about, you know, who should we be talking to? Usually you all have names of individuals or groups that you think that we should be reaching out to. So we always start there. And then from there, we start reaching out into our own networks to find out who are some of the people we don't hear from. And then we start introducing some names that way and some organizations that way and adding them to the list. And I mean, if you're talking about specific strategies, like the how we're going to do it, I mean, we're in COVID, so it's phone calls, emails is what it is. Unless we find somebody or we learn from talking to some folks that we need to do something different.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we're pushing these out a little bit, is, you know, waiting to see where we kind of are with the pandemic and ability to get together. So we're prepared to do it virtually if that's what's necessary, like, you know, we're doing tonight, but maybe by mid to later in the summer, we'll have a different circumstance that could allow us to be together in a safe format. So we'll see.
And Luke, just so you know, I have some constituents that go across a lot of those categories. I'm sure we all do. I'm not sure what the population of Middleton is per capita, but I'm guessing it's close to like 85% Caucasian. So probably 15% of the population is diverse, might be higher. But I know that, but like the parks near my house do tend to have the most diversity. And it's because the kids, are going to Sauk Trail, and they do have more kids of diversity. So per capita, I probably have some more than other districts. So when they're doing their reach out through their regular network, I can, as part of my sit down, I can also go through my contact list. I'm sure as we all will, but I do have some people already in mind to see.
May I add something to this conversation? Just 2 quick points. Annette Miller here again. So one, I do think that it's important to look at the school district statistics on what the overall representation is demographically, because that's your future. And so whatever those statistics look like, that's what we should be using to guide us as we think about voicing and weight of voicing. And that should be obviously complemented with the demographics that are today as well too. And then the other thing I just wanted to bring up is that there's been some conversations about just, thinking about the vision panels and the advisory committee. And I just want to remind folks that no one person is a single story. We all hold multiple identities. So, I think it's great, and it's very important that you share with us to make sure that the different voices that you're hearing from or not hearing from are included, but just know that in the work that we do, people come with an intersectionality of identity. So you can find someone who comes with like 3 or 4 or 5, they could wear a couple of different hats. And so I want to just remind you of that these panels and these groups are not just representing one identity. We are looking for people who are rich with multiple identities, who can really give us an insight and a reflection on what we should be thinking about as we think about the vision in the future. So thank you.
Kathy,
Yeah, I agree with that there people bring a lot to the table. I'm looking at the underrepresented communities, and when I look at that list, there is going to be a lot to unpack in that visioning panel. And if that is the only place where we're specifically calling out the older adult community, I think that might get lost in that discussion. And I think that it wouldn't be a bad thing to add older adult community under neighborhood influencers as well.
Yeah, I would agree. I was thinking the same thing, that would be a really good theme panel to put it on. And to kind of echo what Annette was saying, it's really important that the vision panels are in no way meant to like segregate people. And that's why I was using the word theme.
Right.
What we've kind of identified is the theme of that panel. What would the primary discussion sort of revolve around as far as how it affects the vision of the community? So we would absolutely be looking to include people of color in the business group and in the other groups. And so I just want to make that, really clear that we're not here to put specific people into boxes.
Right.
But identify is what is the conversation going to be about? And within that conversation, we want to get a broad representation for that conversation.
Right. Yeah. But
to go back to your point, the neighborhood influencers was, I don't want to say a catch-all, but a little bit, less defined maybe than the others. And given what the mayor laid out, and who to include, and to ensure that those long-term residents who have seen the change, and I think that could be one place where we could look to be sure that those voices were included in that vision panel.
Thank you.
So this has been really helpful to me, and I'm sure the rest of our group as well. Just want to, before we kind of wrap up here, just confirm that seems like everybody is on board with having an advisory committee, that this is what its role would be, and that we would look to populate it generally with people within these kind of general categories, if you will. The one elected official representative from each of the vision panels, a couple of committee members, and one staff member.
So Scott, I like to say one thing, that I'm really happy that you have the public vision event. So, and I don't know when it would be. I can see it's after activity number 4. And I would just hope at that time, the pandemic is under control or somewhat controlled, that we can have a, really large gathering. So I would like you to think about it, that how and when, and how can we have the widest possible participation from the whole city. So I would not want to replace the wisdom of that what comes out of that public vision by the advisory committee, and the others will vision panels would have a great input. But finally, I think we would need the confirmation from the public in general, and then maybe add to it what we get out of that public event. To me, that public event will be very important, because this is for the whole city, and we want to involve that. Thank you. Great job. Otherwise.
Yeah, no, we absolutely agree. And as I mentioned before, we're looking to hold that meeting probably late September, maybe early October. So again, we're hopeful, I think, like everybody else, that there'll be some return to normalcy here in terms of our ability to get together, and if that's still not safe for everybody, then maybe do it as a hybrid event, so that those who are comfortable could attend in person, and those who would prefer to attend virtually could do it that way as well. So that is certainly our goal too, mayors, to drive as many people to that meeting as possible. And as we get closer to that, we'll provide some ideas for how all of you as council members can help to get folks out to that meeting and get their input.
Great, thank you.
This is Robert. I just want to say I'm really excited about this. I'm looking forward to being interviewed by one of your team, getting kind of that one-on-one discussion going about where this is all going, and yeah, this will be fun. Thank you.
Sure. Well, we're very much looking forward to it as well.
Okay. So this, if there's nothing else, this is the same Zoom meeting that we're going to be holding for the council meeting as well,
Yes.
correct, Mike?
Yes, Kathy, but you would adjourn this meeting.
Okay,
And
then we'll just come
the
back.
mayor would open the city council meeting.
Okay, so I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the committee of the whole is adjourned. We'll reach council meeting at 7:30.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you all.
Great job, Kathy. See you soon. Well, I have not paid attention to him, but he does seem well. Today he was in our bed and sitting there and this is very uncommon for him. Yeah. Okay. Before that, when I got up, I rode upstairs and get my keys to the hose line. There was some hospital in the hallway. So, he's a free soul. He said his weakness, which is bad. He does it every few months when he speaks his mistakes. He goes through the cycle, doesn't he? When I got done, he stopped.
Hey, Luke Fusard, is that Bart Starr with you?
Indeed it is. Indeed it
Nice
is.
picture.
Thank
Nice
you.
picture. Bart Starr was one of the heroes of my youth. What a fine gentleman too.
Correct. Yeah. We were fortunate to meet him at his home. This was about 10 years ago, and it couldn't have been nicer.
You met him at his home?
I did.
How nice.
I know. Yep. We were living in Alabama, and he was too, and happened to know the same people, and the rest they say is history.
Wow, that's great.
Back in his era, there was a restaurant in Janesville owned by Fuzzy Thurston.
Fuzzy Thurston, yeah.
I can't remember. It was called Fuzzy Thurston's. And I can't remember the name of the restaurant, but yeah, that's a great name, isn't it?
I'm
But that's from
partial
the
to that
speaker.
name because that was my nickname for most of my life.
Fuzzy
Was he?
or Thurston?
No, Fuzzy.
Thurston Howell.
I had a fro in high school and college, you know, and it was natural too, so.
Or maybe both fuzzy and.
Right.
And that's good name.
It's a great name.
Mayor, did you say you were going to do the resolutions before the public
Yep.
comments tonight?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes.
And we'll let people know that now,
Yes.
that the two resolutions, and you also have a proclamation as well.
Yeah, so we should do the proclamation first as well. How do you want to do? Should we do that too, or? I guess we can do the proclamation to begin with and then the resolutions.
Sure, I think that works.
Yeah, it's probably doesn't make too much of a difference.
Mhm.
Of course, the resolutions are more important here, so.
I think they're all important, and I think the most important thing is we just, when the meeting starts, we announce it so that everybody is aware.
Yes. Well, it is 7:30 and I'm gonna call the meeting of Middleton Common Council for May 4th, 2021 to order. And the first item on the agenda is the roll call.
And I'll take that. This is Mike Davis. So Councilmember Olson,
Here.
Burke,
Present.
Nelson,
Here.
Kuhn, Emily Kuhn, Bussard,
Present.
West,
Present.
Okay.
Ramsey,
Here.
Sullivan,
Here.
and Kuhn.
Here.
All
All
right.
present.
Okay, we are going to have the proclamation resolution before we go to the public comments. And I'm going to start with the proclamation honoring National Travel and Tourism Week. Honoring National Travel and Tourism Week, May 2nd to 8th, 2021. Whereas the power of travel has been a consistent driver of Middleton's economy and workforce, and whereas the tourism industry in Middleton strives to promote the Good Neighbor City as an excellent place to live, work, play, and visit, and endeavors to support the local economy through marketing and promotion. And whereas tourism economics reported travel in Middleton generated 176.4 million in visitor spending in 2019, and tourism in Middleton supported 1,836 jobs that year. Additionally, visitor spending, visitor supported jobs, and business sales generated 35 million in state and local governmental revenues. And whereas 30% of Middleton lodging room tax collections are contributed to the city's general fund to support essential services and programs. And whereas meetings and events have always been a core business function that helps companies strengthen business performance